Today we're going to look at how to write using motifs. If you haven't seen the motifs video, you can watch it right here. And if you have seen it, well, I didn't actually plan anything else for this opening, so I guess we'll just wait for the title sequence. Let's look back at the Mozart's 40th. In the phrases video, I called this entire first line the motif. And that is one way of looking at it. But it may be more useful for composition to view just these first three notes as the motif. He takes those first three notes and he repeats it exactly the same way twice, before finally adding another note which breaks the pattern. And from there, the melodic pattern changes on the way down, but the rhythmic motif is retained. It's still 2/8 and 1/4. Then, for the second phrase, he takes the entire phrase and does a diatonic transposition down one step. This variation is necessary in order for the piece to be interesting. Quoting from Arnold Schoenberg, "Repetition alone often gives rise to monotony, and monotony can only be overcome by variation. Variation means change, but changing every feature produces something foreign, incoherent, and illogical. It destroys the basic shape of the motif." So just in this first period, we see some stuff that we can do with motifs. We can repeat a cell in order to establish a pattern. We can rely on the rhythmic motif while changing the melody, or we can transpose the entire motif up or down. Of course, for transposition, we could also change the accidentals, which would retain the intervallic relationships while not strictly adhering to the key. That's a really good way to modulate, by the way. Maybe this will be best seen if we actually create a motif and mess with it. Remember from the motifs video, I said that one definition of a motif requires a characteristic interval and a characteristic rhythm. So here's a little motif. From there, we could build an entire phrase just by messing with the motif a little. Certainly not a spectacular phrase, but it works for example. It's harmonized with just 1 and 5. To make the phrase, all I did was take the opening motif and make a sequence out of it. I also knew that I wanted this phrase to be an open phrase, so I ended it on a member of the 5 chord. Some more stuff we could do. We could play the motif backwards. We would call this the retrograde. So instead of this, we end up with this. We could also play the motif upside down. We'd call this an inversion, which sounds like this. We could also play it upside down and backwards, which is called the retrograde inversion. We could also make the rhythms longer, perhaps double the length of each note. This is called augmentation, and it sounds like this. We could also do the opposite, make all of the notes shorter, which is called diminution. We could also play only a part of the motif, which is called fragmentation. Maybe we constantly repeat the motif, but we take a note away from the end of it every time. Or perhaps we could leave out notes randomly from the middle of the motif. These are all common devices used in the development section of sonata form, which was popular in the classical period. There are almost limitless ways to manipulate a motif, and I've barely scratched the surface. And frankly, I've really only talked about what composers in the classical era did. However, in a lot of ways, this is still how composers think of motifs. Just start writing a whole bunch of motifs and see if you can come up with something cool. And feel free to share them with me. Leave any questions you have in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching this episode of 2-Minute Music Theory. If you like what you saw, please like and subscribe. Also be sure to check out my other channel, Jesse Strickland Music, which is home of all of my compositions. And if you're the kind of person who uses social media, feel free to connect with me there.